Today, Great.com talks with Jillian Winkler, who is the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships of Safe Water Network. Now, if you've not heard of them, they are an innovative organization focused on delivering clean, safe water to millions of people in need. If you're new here to the podcast, please press subscribe on your YouTube and your podcast app, because today we are going to learn all about clean, safe water. Where it comes from, what it takes to get there, why it's so important for each community to manage its own sustainable supply. Ms. Jillian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Safe Water Network, it almost feels like it describes itself as I say the title, but I do have to start there. Can you give us a broad stroke for someone that is new to your story or new to the organization? Can you tell us a bit about the mission, who you guys are, what you have going on?
Sure. So we are a pretty amazing nonprofit, actually founded by actor philanthropist Paul Newman, as well as some other civic and business leaders. And we work to develop and demonstrate affordable solutions that close the safe water access gap, as you mentioned, major issue, global development issues, share knowledge, and build partnerships that reach millions. So we use an integrated strategy to accomplish this. We don't just focus on one piece. It makes our work much more complex and complicated, but we think it does a better job at getting it done. So first, we partner with local government, social entrepreneurs, community groups to implement locally owned and operated safe water stations. These can be a water kiosk, they can be a micro utility, so really serving that piped function throughout a community, actually directly to homes and institutions. And these are closely managed and monitored like small businesses to ensure not only reliable and convenient safe water today, but safe water for generations to come. Really bucking longstanding trends, as you mentioned, in the water sector, where broken and failed systems are commonplace. Second, we work to build the capacity across what we call the decentralized market-based water sector to improve performance and sustainability. So there are a lot of players working on water in the space, including government water providers, plenty of them, and nonprofits, NGOs, private operators, but they have varying degrees of success in delivering safe water consistently. Maybe they rely on the local electricity grid, but then can't treat water during blackouts or grid issues. Maybe they aren't putting revenue from water sales aside to pay for repairs. So when something breaks down, the system remains down in perpetuity. Or maybe they don't realize that their water source, which might be from a lake or groundwater well, has become contaminated. So now their community members are getting sick. So we try to equip other organizations with tools and skills to avoid these pitfalls, really common challenges in the water sector, by providing training, assessments, and technical assistance. And then finally, we take our insights of field work and relationships with governments and peers to bring stakeholders together. What are the policies and financing mechanisms needed to scale these pretty good solutions that we've identified and that others have identified as well? We believe very deeply that a rising tide lifts all boats. A water idiom for the sector, but the safe water access gap is huge. Over 2 billion people cannot turn on a tap at their home, near their home, and fill a glass up with clean water, cook their vegetables in clean water, and we don't expect to fix it on our own. So we share knowledge and collaborate and jointly advocate to create an ecosystem where many organizations could be working to achieve a shared goal.
First, I can't let the water idiom go. That was a good joke. I had to, let me tip my hat to that. I'm one that I like to say, let's pour gasoline on this, or, what lit your fire? And I can't do any of that. So thanks for filling that void. I want to circle back. I do want to unpack your model, and let's talk a little bit about just how you guys are doing things. I appreciate you breaking it down and simplifying it to 3 or 4 pillars for me. But before we get too far into your model, I wanted to ask, a bit about the problem.
Mhm.
I mean, if I think back to even like grade school, third, fourth, fifth grade, I remember people coming in and talking to our school about, when you brush your teeth, make sure you shut the water off.
Mhm.
As soon as you start the shower, jump in, even if it's cold, like don't let the
Mhm.
water get blazing hot. Like I've always heard about water conservation and how important this is, but I think you said maybe 2 million people there. My question is, how many people are suffering from the lack of? Like, how big is this problem? Do you
So
have any numbers around scale?
yeah, so 2 billion people have lack the access. And so
Mm,
this can be cut a lot of different ways. When I say 2 billion lack safely managed water. And so that means not just there's a hand pump that they can access water. Can they access safe water,
mhm.
reliable water, so that when they need water, they know that they will have water? Do they have to walk miles to get, or kilometers to access this water? If they have to walk 5 kilometers, that's not safely managed
Mm.
water. That's not considered according to kind of the international development community, the UN, the Sustainable Development Goals. So 2 billion people lack, what we want as safe water, where I can, maybe it's not inside my house, maybe it's a tap right outside, a household tap right outside my home, because people live in all different types of structures and different types of communities. But can I get it when I expect it? Will it be safe to drink, and I know I can drink it without worrying about illness? Do I have to miss school or work to go walk to access it? And is it affordable?
Mm.
So we're really trying to address people who are living on $1 to $2 a day, $1 to $4 a day, depending on the market. There might be other water available, but if it's inaccessible or any person has to spend, you know, a large percent of their income on water, that's not right, and it's not safely managed.
Uh, you hinted at in the beginning here, founded 2006 by Paul Newman and crew, team of
Mm-hmm.
leaders.
Yeah.
Do you have any numbers around the scale that you're operating at? So we've talked about the challenge and how big the
Right.
problem is. How many people or water bottles? I mean, do you have any numbers you could give us?
Sure. So currently, through these safe water stations, and that's the most kind of direct, tangible impact, we serve a geography of 1.7 million people.
Mm,
So we have um, stations in Ghana and stations in India that serve, rural, peri-urban, urban communities, together 1.7 million people. And of course, we don't, not every single person is using that water, but for it's a pretty large operation. And so we have, local, really highly professional teams in both countries that do the outreach to communities, to entrepreneurs, to community groups and local governments on co-developing and co-implementing new stations, as well as providing ongoing support to these local operations.
I'm trying to wrap my head around, and I even did this last night, so it tells you I was really trying to dig into what is the driver of this problem. And
Mhm.
I mean, I looked last night, I was doing some Googling. 71% of the Earth's surface is water.
Mhm.
Knowing that 2 billion people lack the clean water that we're looking for, that we're talking about, that's
Mhm.
accessible, that's they have enough resources to be able to purchase it, all the above.
Right.
What is causing that problem? Is it a lack of, like, there's just not enough clean water out there? Is it a lack of machinery? Like we don't have the mechanism to get clean water? Is it a lack of
Yeah.
resources? What is driving this?
Oh, that's big. Lots of things. There's a lot of challenges. I think one of the issues that we see time and time again, and after we made big moves and big progress with the Millennium Development Goals, in terms of getting basic access. So putting in a hand pump, putting in a well, but it was a real focus on outputs, a real focus on infrastructure. And infrastructure, not easy, but not even the most challenging part. It's one thing to lay a pipe down. It's another thing to manage that pipe network efficiently, cost effectively, and in a way so that if there's a leak, a leak in a pipe can create first, there's tons of wasted water. It could create water quality issues so that the water that does come out of the tap after going through a leaky pipe is contaminated. So what we found, and actually our founders set out to kind of just, they saw this problem and they said, oh, there must be a technology there that can fix it. And what they realized, pretty early on was, wait a second, it has nothing to do with technology, because we know there's constantly new technologies coming out, and there's some great ones that, we don't pull water from air to create water, or we don't do desalination necessarily, but there are a lot of technologies, and I'm less concerned about the technology piece. I think we'll keep finding really innovative ways to address, emerging water quality issues. But what we consistently saw was a lack of kind of local management capacity, local financial management capacity, not a focus on matching, what's needed today with how to keep things functioning well and sustainably tomorrow. So, in some of the communities we work in, we implement a new system and we see a broken hand pump, right? And that's part of it, is that the community has grown too large, that a hand pump is not sufficient for the population growth. They need more production. And I think this focus on, or this difficult balance between affordable water and also what's required to keep things going. So, we really focus on affordability. Our tariffs are going to be very in line with, what the UN would consider an affordability guideline. We remain below that. But we also need to collect some revenue so that when something breaks down, we can pay for it. When we need to replace a part entirely, we can. That somebody is doing water quality tests so that we can recognize if there are challenges. And the attention to those components, those sustainability components, have only, I think, recently there's been a focus on. I think in the, billions of dollars have been invested by governments, development agencies, nonprofits, donors, and the focus tends to be on solving today's problem. Yeah. And then you find that the next week, you have the problem again.
The approach that you guys are taking, and you hinted at it there, I want to put a pin in that because I think you hit 2 points. I think you have a unique approach to this, like online. I've seen it labeled as the social enterprise approach. And like you're talking about, taking enough to be able to create this sort of feedback loop and fix the problems that are being generated from producing the clean water. I thought that was really cool. I do want to talk a little bit more about that, but first, maybe just one more question on the number side. You mentioned impact-wise, you guys have at least have reached about 1.7 million people, but it's specific to Ghana and India. Can you help me understand sort of why we started there? Are they lacking more? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So we set out to really test our assumptions and test a model in countries where we felt first there was an understanding that there is a value on water, safe water. So, we weren't comfortable testing the social enterprise approach in communities where historically for decades, water has been a free good. Because that's already, it's a difficult behavior change and, activation problem. We also wanted to test it in countries with, strong government policies and strong government interest in addressing the water crisis, and in different regions. So there were a confluence of factors why it was Ghana and India, but we saw need, we saw government buy-in in these, this type of solution, and a consumer market, not a beneficiary market, a consumer market that was amenable to it. And we really feel, consumers, the users of our water, are integral to making sure this is sustainable. Their use of it makes sure that they're able to use it in 2 years from now. So that's a big distinction that we stand by. In terms of geographic scope beyond the countries we work in, we know there are a lot of great organizations out there that have really strong, trusted relationships. They have, track records of success with national, local governments. We would like to build their capabilities. We don't feel like we need to exist in 12 countries. We want to take what we've learned and the credibility and the expertise that we've built to apply not just our expertise, but the tools we've developed and the strategies to help, the larger NGO, whether it's a large NGO that does water health education and they want to expand their water portfolio to what we call the missing middle, kind of these growing peri-urban small town communities, or it's a small implementer that just needs a little help professionalizing or a little help on innovative tools and strategies.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear you guys aren't trying to build some sort of like take over the world water empire. It's more of there is a big problem. There's a mission here within the mission statement. There's a goal,
right.
And many organizations that are trying to conquer, that are trying to tackle this problem. And we're fighting a war against them, not against the competitors. We're fighting a war against the challenge, right? So let's all share information. Let's collaborate, specialize in specific areas and niches, and all tackle this problem together. So
exactly.
I'm glad that we're not keeping, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and we really do it. So
it's all over your website.
Like,
all over your website.
It is a really part of it is network is in our name. Like that's the goal. And so there are a lot of different ways we do that, but they're in very tangible ways. There are alliances, there are communities of practice, all of our, publications, we try to get it out to the world and have conversations with others after it so they can, dive into the nuance.
Can you talk to me about maybe just high level milestones, how this all works, like how we go from dirt to water station? We're building these safe water stations. You're sitting on the East Coast here in the US.
Right.
I mean, how do we spot a location, a community? Are they applying? Are you finding them? Like just kind of, this is it could be a very detailed question. We could fill an hour with this, but just kind of high level milestones. Can you help me understand how this thing goes?
Sure. And yes, it could get very wonky and detailed. And I will say I get to talk about it, but I can't take credit for it because we have much more expert teams doing the work. Well, as a nonprofit, one of the first things we need to do, and we do this bit simultaneously, is raise funding to support these systems. But in terms of the technical and programmatic angles, it depends a bit between India and Ghana, but generally, and it depends sometimes the district or where we're working. For example, in Ghana, we might have developed, implemented a station in a given district, and we partner with the district assembly there, who gives us the permission to do this work. And we, a neighboring community might see that their neighbors, that their family in the community next door is benefiting from safe water. They might come to us. So in some cases, come to us. We've had people reach out to us on Facebook, come to us directly, or we'll have conversations with the district assembly to kind of develop a pipeline of communities. So as funding comes in, and they will, as much as possible contribute to match the funding, we'll identify a pipeline of 10 communities in a district where we think that our model would be applicable. And that part of that first process is a feasibility assessment. So we do, this is from the demographics of the population. It's the water quality source and testing, kind of the other market factors. Is it near market? Are there community institutions like schools and healthcare facilities, things like that? If we've identified that a community is a good fit, we will start kind of community mobilization activities. So we'll work with the district assembly and local informal and traditional, formal and traditional leadership, government and traditional leadership, to identify who would be the right people to serve on a water management committee to provide a bit of community level oversight. That crew will also help us identify a local operator that we will train up to manage the system. At the same time, we'll be working with our tech. Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't even realize we're hiring locals. Do they become employees? Like, are they getting, is this more of a community impact than just the water supply? Are they then getting pay and things like, check this out. That's so cool.
So the operator, or the social entrepreneur will make, in the case of a social entrepreneur where we go into it together with, an individual business person or a local person from the community in India, they'll collect a profit. Cool. With an operator, they'll make salaries. We engage vendors who are, receive a commission for water. They manage the different water points and provide kind of, certainly during COVID, provided considerable support in terms of hygiene, managing social distancing, the hand washing stations that we implemented. So yeah, we really, it's not, I wouldn't say it's huge numbers in a given community, sure, but in terms of salaries or livelihoods, maybe 3 to 5. But we do also engage community members to serve as, community health mobilizers, to lead training. So there's a lot of opportunity, and to also serve on these water management teams. And so, yeah, the operators are trained up. We also then, our engineering team and our water and our technical team will identify specific sites where they think would be good to site the system. Test volumes, test water quality, contaminants. We use that information to then design the system. None of the technologies we use are things that somebody else could find. It tends to be pretty standard off the shelf, unless we're testing a new innovation like prepaid meters, like a different solar panels, which now are a big part of our work in Ghana. And our team will engage, a local construction team to build the system. As we're doing that, we're having regular engagement with the community, doing health and hygiene awareness. Why is it worth it to you to spend on safe water? In India, we do really cool experiential marketing activities where we do kind of water quality tests in front of people, and we have community members show their neighbors, these are the two things you're dealing with. Yeah. This is our water. This is the raw source water. And then we'll have usually, an event to launch the system. We'll do a period of time where we might provide, incentives or promotions for people to start using the water. And then once the station's launched, we provide ongoing support from cluster level professional services teams. We call it the field service capability. And they, if a new technology comes out or a new strategy, they'll train the operators. They'll do consumer marketing activities, consumer education activities. In Ghana, and in India now as well, since COVID, we've transferred considerably to electronic payments, mobile monies, or digital transfers. And that takes a lot of training to get people comfortable with digital finance. So this field service team will provide that support on an ongoing basis. And of course, we meet with the water management committees on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, to review station operation data, to review financials, to really understand, how water is being managed, how the station's being managed, and kind of identify if there are areas that need to be tweaked.
Yeah, there's so many cool things in there. One, I love that it's not just a water life cycle. Like, we're not just finding the supply, creating clean water, trying to sell, finding the supply, alongside that, like in parallel, we're running campaigns and educational campaigns and marketing events and trying to get the community to understand the importance of what's going on and why they should be involved. Like, I think that's something that we're running in parallel that it's kind of slept on. I don't think people coming into this would think about something like that. The other piece that I found on your website that I thought was really interesting that I hadn't thought of is, depending on where you're tapping in, the substances, like what you find in water, if it's not clean and safe, is going to be very different, right? What you have to filter out, or what's in the bacteria, whatever is in that, is going to be very different. And so you guys are having to take a sample, and I mentioned innovative company at the beginning of this, because you're pulling a sample, having to ship this out, see what's going on, come back in, meet with somebody local, build the machinery to be able to filter out and get that type of water clean. It's just it's such an interesting model, and to have the impact that you're having, to be frank, at the scale that you guys are at. I mean, you're not 10,000 employees. It's I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, our technical teams are really bring like a really deep expertise on water. We have leads of our teams who used to work for PepsiCo, or the big companies where they need to, quality is, if the quality is not right, they're going to be in trouble. So we take water quality very seriously. And I think what's been really interesting, you actually mentioned it because we're talking about shipping samples out or getting samples tested. Sometimes there's not local laboratory capabilities to test what we're seeing as kind of emerging contaminants. Industry's changing, things are happening to the water supply. And so one of the things that we've been trying to understand is are there low cost treatment and monitoring tools that we can do at the station level instead of, we would still be doing kind of the external validation, of course, on a quarterly basis, but considering the cost, how samples could be adjusted, can be harmed by travel, to, especially during COVID, or it takes too long because of a lot of the issues that happened over the last 18 months. Are there ways that we can, have a stopgap at the station level just to make sure that, as water quality issues are changing, we're able to maintain day to day strong supply. And we test our water every day. None of the water that leaves the tap is untested, but to get to these newer issues, what can we be doing, and to get to them in a cost-effective way? Because we don't want to have to raise prices to make sure that our water is safe.
I want to wrap up with, I have two more questions for you. First, what is the biggest problem you're facing? I mean, we've talked lots about COVID. Maybe that's the answer, is what COVID has brought, and we can unpack that. But is there something, I think I think everybody's been influenced by COVID. Are you facing something bigger or heavier? Like what's your biggest challenge today?
So I think so the COVID piece ties into this a bit, but obviously COVID is affecting supply chains and being able to provide field services directly. And so we're trying to automate and do more remote monitoring because, to limit that, to bring costs down, and digital operating platforms that can aggregate data without us having to go to each station and take the time to consolidate and validate. So COVID, well, on the first thing, COVID, we see water as PPE, but a lot of the discussion around COVID didn't quite hit it was an ancillary piece. Water hasn't been involved as much as a part of COVID response and relief. And frankly, the campaigns and the health and education work that we've done over the last 18 months, it's all about COVID. Are some of our stations in India basically now serve, in addition to providing water, as resource centers for health and hygiene and COVID issues. But one of the things that happened in Ghana is that the government of Ghana did a free water mandate. So really important for lifeline supply for many, households that might not have the water they need to wash their hands and to, do everything recommended. But at the same time, that meant that we weren't able to collect revenue. So we, had to access our maintenance reserves, which, a bit of stealing from the future to pay for today. And so that's been, and why I'm saying this was a challenge, and we raised external funding, and we had some partners come in and really help us through it. But it goes back to this financial sustainability challenge. We want to minimize as much as possible the subsidy required to manage these systems, and we may get there. In some model we may get there. We might not be able to get there in other places. But it's a real challenge, and doing a system like this is more than building a well and calling it a day. You want this to happen in the future, but unless governments are willing to pay for that subsidy, which at least in the near term, again, because we don't want to raise prices, So we wouldn't have the subsidy if we started charging more for money
Yeah.
for water, but we don't want to do that. And we don't have access necessarily, or these types of systems don't have access to the same types of public subsidies that, say, you and I, our water utility is receiving. So how do we maintain the balance between, the most cost-effective, smallest subsidy required system and balancing affordability for low-income households that already pay proportionately more for water, don't have the money to pay for, doctors if there's illness in the family because of water. They're not near subsidized utility services. They live furthest from water access, so there are all these issues that we don't want to minimize their ability to access our water. So what can we do to bring down costs, to bring down costs and streamline, and then also to advocate for why, others need to be investing in these solutions, even if it seems, or start kind of sharing this, or better targeting subsidies. And actually the World Bank has done a lot of work on this and kind of exploring, are we doing what we need to be doing around water and water subsidies?
I think that's the segue for me to ask how people could get involved. But let me first say, earlier you said I'm going to give the answer, but there are many people to thank. I just wanted to maybe blanket that and say you guys are crushing. I've had the chance now. I mean, I think we booked this maybe 7 days ago or something, but since then I've done research and I've watched videos and I've read on your blog and I've read the facts and the spending reports, and I've really gone down just to see what am I getting myself into. And y'all are the real deal. It's been so much fun, and to hear you sort of condense all of my research into 40 minutes. It's been such a treat. So I first just wanted to thank you for giving me a few minutes, but for those that are tuning in and said, I agree, Josh, this is pretty legit. How can they get involved?
Sure. And I appreciate your words, because we really, when you're looking at reports and we monitor the hell out of our work. So we really can back up what we say with the data. So yeah, no, if people want, well, obviously we'd love for people to get involved. Obviously you can learn more about us on our website, safewaternetwork.org, and social media channels. If you'd like to contribute and make your impact, you could donate at safewaternetwork.org/donate. And, of course, while we're always open to receiving new funding, there's a lot of ways you can support our work beyond that. We'd love listeners to be ambassadors for the Safe Water cause. We're actually about to launch our 15th year anniversary campaign shortly. So we're going to be sharing a lot of exciting things on social media, and, would love to see our work shared across your channels. You can also help support small, creative fundraising events, hopefully as things start becoming more in person, though we've done a few little virtual fundraisers, and you can always find that information out on our social media. And we're hoping that next year we can start doing more in-person events. Our second big gala, we had a great one in 2019 and then had to put that on hold. And then also, if you work for a company, might see whether it's active or interested in supporting social impact projects through their corporate responsibility strategy. We're always looking for new opportunities to engage industry and corporate partners, really translate expertise in a given area, say digital tools or engineering, and resources, of course, into impactful and innovative projects that can really directly improve lives.
Yeah. Lots of cool ways to get involved. Again, thank you very much for your time. For those that can get involved, I'd encourage you to do so. For those that can't, I'd encourage you at least hit their website. There's so much data that they've aggregated and they've provided to the public for free. And just knowing what's out there and what's going on is a step in the right direction. So, Shelley, thank you very much. For those that are listening, if you enjoyed this episode, please press subscribe on your YouTube or podcast app. That will show the algorithms that this is an important conversation, so more people can learn about the importance of having access to clean water and getting this to as many communities as fast as possible.